So I think this is your first time, so I'll just, my spiel is that this class has a beginning and has a end, or it has a beginning and has an end, but nobody comes to the beginning and stays straight through. People drift into the class and stay for as long as they want, or do something with them, and then they drift out of the class, and if you keep coming eventually, long enough, eventually we'll get through all of the topics on the curriculum. If you don't have, I guess you have nothing, right? So here's our curriculum sheet. You been here? Your name, sorry, is one more time?
Joshua.
Joshua. And you are? James. Jamie? James, sorry. Everyone else has sheets? You have a... If you are taking this class because it's part of an interest in a formal conversion program, then you should, and like need to be involved in that, we should be meeting individually every 3 to 6 weeks to discuss that process. But everyone is welcome to come to the class as long as it's urgent for you. Please keep coming. So we are, and also if you miss a class, they're all online. They're on the shul has a YouTube channel, and all of the classes, I think several, maybe 2 or 3, cycles through the entire curriculum is already online since in the past 4 or 5 years. So we are now, we're nearing the end actually. Roman numeral 5, okay? Roman numeral 5. Roman numeral 5 is kosher speech. Okay, that's our, the last prior unit was kosher food, things that aren't allowed to go into our mouths. Kosher speech concerns what comes out of our mouths, okay? And there are, maybe a couple of different levels of things we're not, they say, there's a little pithy statement that great people speak about ideas, and mediocre people speak about events, and really base people speak about other people, okay? That's a sign of being a refined person is to not talk about other people. And so there's something in a Hebrew phrase called richilut, which is gossip, and it's a discouraged or forbidden form of speech. It is not necessarily harmful, not necessarily damaging, and it's true, it's not false, but it's just sharing worthless, meaningless, needless gossip about other people, and it's frowned upon because it can be harmful, and it's objectifying to other human beings to talk about, to be so concerned about their goings on. It's one thing, if it means something, if it's, if there's some issue at stake, like somebody hurt my feelings, or somebody did this wonderful thing for me I'd like to share because it's worthwhile for you to know that's one thing. But just to, so-and-so, did you see her shoes, or did you hear the way he was complaining about the weather the other, just, I don't know, like empty, worthless, gossipy kind of speech is called richilut, and is not a good thing. But the worse than that, more serious, is something called lashon hara, which is evil speech or bad speech, which is saying something about somebody else which is true but is damaging or derogatory. And as a basic rule of Jewish ethics of speech, lashon hara is forbidden. To say something about someone else that is derogatory or damaging, even though it's true, with the exception of what's called in Hebrew a to'elet. To'elet means like a purpose or a need. If the information needs to be shared, then that overrides the prohibition of lashon hara. Then it's no longer lashon hara, then it has to be. So let's just think of some examples. What would be lashon hara that would be permissible because there's a to'elet, because there's a need to share?
Political disagreements and disagreements.
Political disagreements, like saying, for example, can you be like?
Well, I don't maybe know if it's justified, but I see a lot of times, at least in, I have images in my head in the Israeli politics of people, comparing other people to Nazis in terms of, and things like that. And obviously, I don't think that's justified, but I assume that that's where, they find justification.
Yeah, so that's, I don't, Lashon Hara is derogatory, damaging, but it's also true. So to compare a political opponent to a Nazi, is in most cases not true, unless they're Nazis, right? So which, unfortunately, is sometimes true. It has to be said now. But so I would say I wouldn't put that in the. But a little bit Lashon Hara would be to say, if you say, my opponent is irresponsible and right and foolish, impulsive and uncurious about the world. That's damaging and derogatory, but the toelet would be you have to make a vote. I want you to vote against them because the good of our society is at stake, right? Another example?
Medical condition?
Medical condition. Well, so for example, how would sharing a medical condition be, with whom and in what circumstances?
Just I would think diseases that carry some kind of stigma, like AIDS or something, and the person is sick or has to go to the hospital and it has to be disclosed.
To whom?
Doctor.
Right, exactly. Right. So meaning you're right. So medical information could be damaging or derogatory if it has a stigma, or even not. Even if it's still it could be derogatory. If it's somebody has a mental illness or somebody has diabetes, I don't know, or somebody carries a genetic predisposition towards some form of cancer. That all could be harmful information, and I think you couldn't tell that to a neighbor, or that would be right because that's damaging. It's derogatory. It can hurt them. Even though it's true, that would still be forbidden. But if there's a reason why the person has to know, because you're taking your neighbor, your friend to the ER, you have to let them know that this person, their HIV status, or that this person is being treated for, is on tranquilizers, and you have to tell that to the doctors so they don't, the drugs don't harm them. Or maybe somebody is dating a friend of yours. And maybe there might be a medical condition that you would have to disclose, even though it might be derogatory, might be damaging, but maybe the person that he's dating or she's dating has a right, that'd be useful information, But I think this person, Harold is a pathological liar. That's been my experience with him. He's a pathological liar. So if I'm telling that to the guy sitting next to me in shul, Harold, he's a pathological liar, that's forbidden Lashon Hara. But if I'm telling that to therefore don't hire him, to work in your business, or, don't, if he's dating your daughter, you may want to say something because he's a pathological liar, that would be a toelet. Okay? I think there's, any other examples? Or? Yeah, I think there's some communities are, I think, don't take the laws of Lashon Hara with enough seriousness that it deserves. I think, and you can see, just maybe you've been in amongst certain groups of friends where the conversation is just saying bad things and destructive things about other people. There's also a risk of not saying Lashon Hara where it has to be said. When there is a toelet, when there's a teacher who is abusive, or there's somebody working for a communal organization who's incompetent, or etc. Right? Or then is. That information has to be shared. Sometimes we are too quick to, it's Lashon Hara, I don't want to say anything, it'd be a scandal if they knew, we'll just try to, push it under the rug, or send them to another department and, have it be solved that way. No, sometimes there is a toilet. If there is a need to share, then it has to be shared.
So where's the line? Say if there is somebody who has a disease and they're dating and they plan to get married, etc.
Yeah.
So if this other person has, say, cancer or something, so then are you required to say, if they have chronic bronchitis or so, if they have some really mild cold, at what point is it toilet, and what point is it...
Look, I think the ethics of, if you're dating somebody and you're thinking of getting married, I think you have to, an ethical obligation of marriage is disclosing important medical conditions that will impact the marriage. The question is, where does somebody else have to intervene, even at the cost of some confidentiality, or I think that's not so simple, and it's not so simple. I don't know that, I don't think there are, sorry. So I guess to your point about some of these challenging gray areas. So two stories. First of all, one story about a good positive story. When my first year in yeshiva, I was at the time 19 years old. We went to, my wife and my mother are having a text conversation about bedtime stories to my children. And so they're texting each other, including me. So their phone is beeping a lot. Great. I'm so happy for that. Great. So we were in yeshiva, and we were, a whole bunch of us were driving someplace, and we were engaged in a conversation that was lashon hara. We were just saying something derogatory about somebody else. And one of my classmates said, "Hey guys, like this is just not right. Let's just stop this." And we just did like that, and it was like one of the most positive, really one of the most positive memories of my life about being in a religious community and feeling that this is what makes a religious Jewish community unique from other communities that I've experienced, where we had all studied and accepted and sort of valued these laws and ethics of lashon hara. That when somebody pointed out, "Hey guys, this is not the kind of conversation we should be having," we were like, "Oh yeah, of course it's not," and we just stopped. And no one felt embarrassed, no one was defensive, and no one just moved on. It was really great. So the other story, there's a rabbi in the early 20th century, we got the reading, okay, that wrote a book on the laws of lashon hara. He called the book Chafetz Chaim, the one who desires life. He was a very important scholar of Jewish law, and he thought that these laws need to be kind of developed and written in a very detailed book form. So after he wrote his book, he sent copies of the book to other significant rabbis in Europe at the time to sort of get their approval. I don't know if you've ever seen, many Jewish books are printed with letters of approval at the beginning. The first page or two will say, "I, important rabbi so-and-so, read this book and I think it's great and I approve it," and sign your name. And then you see, so that's before you buy the book, is this reliable, is this worthwhile? So you see some letters from important people in the first pages. So he did this. Chafetz Chaim, he was the most important rabbi in Europe at the time, but he still thought it was valuable to send copies around to other colleagues and maybe older people and get them to write these haskamot, these appropriations. So the messenger he sent with a copy of this book went to a particular Hasidic rabbi, Rabbi Alexander, and said, "This book that I'd like you to read and write approval." So tell me about the book. Well, the book tells us it's all about the laws of lashon hara. You're reading a book about the laws of lashon hara. So the book tells you that it's just as forbidden to hurt somebody, physically. It's also, forbidden to hurt somebody with words. And the Rabbi said, with words, you could hurt somebody just by a gesture, just by going, is enough to hurt somebody. You need words to hurt somebody. And he didn't sign the book. The messenger came back to the Chafetz Chaim, to the author, and said, "I got all these letters, except that the Hasidic Rabbi Alexander wouldn't sign." The Chafetz Chaim said, "Hasidic Rabbi Alexander?" Like this. So he said, "Well, actually, it's funny you say that, because that's actually what he, mentioned. He actually said that, you don't need words to harm somebody. You harm somebody with a gesture. A dismissive gesture can harm somebody." So the Chafetz said, "Ooh, that's true." And he added a section in his book saying it's also possible to violate these rules just by, hurt somebody just by a gesture. The story is interesting because I read the story in an article that argues the point that story highlights kind of two different ways to think about these laws. One is to think about, it's about ethics, it's about musar, it's about cultivating practices that inculcate ethical excellence in you by, again, speaking a certain way always and being conscious of the impact of your words on others and on the world around you. Or you can treat it as a subject of law that has to be, detailed, paragraphs and subparagraphs and clauses, and that's what the Chafetz Chaim succeeded in doing. He wrote a very, very detailed, exhaustive legal treatment of this topic, which until then had really been treated more as a topic of kind of ethics and rather than something that had precise legal definition. So I think some of these gray areas, if you read the book Chafetz Chaim, it's an exhaustive, comprehensive, very, very detailed legal analysis of all of these topics. But maybe these topics can best be treated, or can also be treated, not so much as something with precise legal definitions and when yes, when no, but as again, how to cultivate certain ethical excellence amongst ourselves and to be hypersensitive about the impact that our words have on other people. So I think it's worthwhile. I think it's a really distinctive thing about religious Jewish communities that they care about these laws. I think it can really elevate things. I had a relative who she would say, she would bring up people's names in conversation. Oh, can't say lashon hara. She'd say, "Miss Schwartz, lashon hara." This is about Lashon Hara. That was like the whole conversation. We just like mention names, and then she would like censor herself that she couldn't say anything else. It was Lashon Hara. So,
Who was that?
who was it? Who?
That was constantly obsessed.
That was my grandmother.
At what point
Yeah.
is the justifications sometimes not as ethical as like society, general society would assume?
So, for example, what are you thinking of?
Like I think like some of the stories of just like ultra Hasidic communities that have some interesting practices that in their community are accepted and others would be looked at as unique and different,
Yeah.
and maybe potentially doing Lashon Hora to people in the community because they've acted out, they've been different, but from an ethical standpoint, it's kind of not.
Yeah, look, look, communities are often act in defensive ways and kind of lash out at people who are different, and I think it's a problem, so you're right, I don't tell you, you're right, so, and therefore, and this exception of Toela can be abused if you're not right, because, well, it's this person is dangerous, I have to tell this negative thing about this person, he's dangerous, he's undermining your way of life because he wears blue shirts, or whatever, he's, which is fine, it's fine to wear blue shirts, but maybe in our community, there are, I showed the example, intentionally, there are Orthodox communities where men only wear white shirts, where wearing blue shirts would be like a kind of an act of defiance, an act of rebellion to wear a blue shirt. And so he's a blue shirt wearer, so of course I can say it's permissible to then share all sorts of negative information about him because I have to stop him from undermining our community and destroying the way of life. So that to me does not seem justifiable, but yeah, that's a risk. All of this, it's risky, right? And then I think maybe that's, you can't, I think Jewish law can make you a better person. It can't make you a good person if you're a bad person, right? I think if you're not fundamentally a decent human being who cares about hurting others and tries to avoid hurting others, then these rules are going to be distorted by. Like if your soul is distorted, these rules will be distorted too.
Yeah.
And you have to. I think these rules build upon like a foundation of basic decency and ethical integrity, and then they can lead to ethical excellence and prevent people from like accidentally harming or backsliding in their ethical commitments. But if you're a scoundrel, this will just give you more tools to be a scoundrel. Like a scoundrel with a PhD.
What if you think something bad about someone, but you don't say it, but like by thinking it, or you
That's interesting. Sometimes somebody says something derogatory about somebody, and you hear them, and you're like, well, I'm not going to accept that, or I'm not going to believe that, or I'm not going to pass the information on. But you know it, and you can't ever look at them again the same way because of what this person told you. That's a problem. Yeah. I have to tell you. That's what's so harmful about Lashon Hara, because the person you tell it to, they can never unknow what you've told them. And so you have to be really careful. So like, I'm going to tell you something, I think Harold's a pathological liar. I'm telling you that because you're about to hire him for your business. Like, oh, no, actually, we actually already hired somebody else, but now that I know that Harold, like, that's going to be really awkward now for, like, forever, so you have to be really careful when you choose to disclose, because it can really poison somebody else's, ability to have a relationship with someone else. If you actually make it up, it's called motzi shema. That's slander. That's even worse. That's if it's not true. Lashon Hara at least is true. If something is not true, that's slander. There's really no excuse for that, and that's a pretty heinous crime. Okay, to kind of make up something false about someone else.
When you speak about truth, this is such a ambiguous concept, because you yourself, maybe through your own eyes, really feel and think that is really the truth, but you have seen it this way. But the reality may be much more complex.
It's also true. Right. You're convinced. Right. It's like the story of. Right. You see somebody. I don't know if you can example. You see somebody who is.
You can see somebody who is a ganav, but then the thing is that if you dig a little bit deeper, he's just bringing the milk to his kid.
Right. See him stealing, and really he's right. Good.
He's saving somebody's life. So
right.
Where does it go?
Yeah. He was.
So truth is a very slippery concept, actually.
Yeah, right. Right. Sometimes in context things are different, or sometimes it looks like this, but really it's that, and you only saw one vantage point. That's true. Yeah, that's why it's good to judge people favorably and not to share information and be careful about all those things. But not to be scared of sharing if there's like a real need. If somebody, if you have an abusive teacher in the school, you don't like sweep them under the rug. You call the police or whatever. You expose them. There is one case, though, where we are allowed to distort the truth, and this is if it's for the sake of peace. There's actually a couple of examples in the Torah, one of which occurred recently when God tells Abraham that he and Sarah are going to have a child, and they're both very old, and this was seen as impossible. And what happens? Abraham laughs. Right? How can I have a child since? Sarah laughs and says, "How can I have a child since my husband is so old?" And God tells Abraham, "Why was Sarah laughing, saying, 'How can I have a child? Because I am so old.'" Right? Sarah had said, "Abraham's old, right? Abraham's old." But God told Abraham, she said that she herself is old. Okay, they're both old. But the point is, she put it on him. And when God told the story, he changed that detail. So the rabbis were very sensitive to this. Like, you can read the story 100 times and not notice that, but once you notice it, it's there. The rabbis understood this to be a case of changing the truth, distorting the truth for the sake of peace. For the sake of a husband and wife having a peaceful, loving relationship, it's permissible to tell these sort of what we call white lies. A lie for the sake of, distort for the sake of peace, and this is right because peace is even a higher priority than truth. Maybe peace is a higher truth, that human beings should get along with one another and have peaceful relationships with one another. That's like a higher form of truth than whatever you're accurately conveying some information. There's also a Talmudic discussion of what do you say at a wedding. Talmud asks, how does one dance and shout and sing for a bride at the wedding? And there's a dispute between Beit Hillel, the house of Hillel, and the house of Shammai. Beit Shammai says, "Kala k'mochi." You just tell it like it is. You say, you sing and dance. You say the bride is kind of plain looking and short. You say the bride has funny teeth and large ears. That's what you say. Whereas Beit Hillel says no. You say Kala ne'ed v'chasud. The bride is beautiful and graceful, and that's what you say. And it's like a wedding song now that people may hear at a wedding, so that's the Hillel is saying to be that kind of sake of peace and having the husband kind of his bride be esteemed in his eyes because everyone's praising her and all that and she feels good. That those are reasons to distort the truth and just say. I think there's one passage. Maybe I think they say, well, maybe just say something else and say like she's a really great personality, or say she has nice parents or something. You could find something nice about, but that doesn't really work so well. And I think every bride is beautiful on her wedding day because every bride is beautiful in the eyes of her groom, right? So in that sense, it's all true. But again, Beit Shammai says, say it like you call it, like you see it, and let the truth has to cut through the mountain. It doesn't matter who gets hurt. And the normative approach of Judaism, no, actually we care about not hurting people, and we can destroy things. Okay, this happens all the time, right? Does this dress make me look fat? And the answer is no, it does not. Okay, do you like my shoes? The answer is yes, I do. Okay. I don't have to tell you that. Okay, that's it. All right. Any questions about this? Questions or reactions? Okay. C, ona'ah, is literally means oppression, and the Talmud divides this prohibition of oppression into two types. One is financial oppression, which is defined as either like a purchase price that is not fair, that it deviates from the fair cost of the item by more than a sixth. That's halakhically defined as oppression. It's in a sort of modern economy, it's sort of hard to think of a situation. It's hard to have an item that has a fixed, clearly defined market rate that you could. Let's say gasoline or Levi's blue jeans, there's a rate that's like, would you give me that example? Because there's always the outlet stores, there's always secondhand, it's always on sale somewhere, but maybe something which has a clear market price. If you sell it for too much or too little, somebody's being defrauded in that transaction, the transaction will be overturned. If something with a clearly defined price is bought or sold for a price that deviates more than a sixth from that price. So it's very rare that this would come up, I think, in a modern economy because prices are understood to be,
You have it in Venezuela right now.
excuse me?
In Venezuela, you have it right now.
In Venezuela?
Yes.
Why? What's
Just
Venezuela?
like the
Hyperinflation.
the market broke down. So.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the central insight of, this is a little of a tangent, but I find it interesting to think about this sometimes. The central insight of Adam Smith is that if I can buy something from you and you can sell it to me, and there can be a price where I win and you win, that both of us win, right? That if I'm selling you widgets at $5 a widget, that's because it cost me less than $5 a widget to make them. And if you're buying them from me at $5 a widget, that means it's worth more than $5 a widget for you to own it. So both of us are wealthier, right? You give me money, I give you a widget, and now both of us are wealthier than we were before. We both win. Wealth is created by this transaction at this fair price. That seems kind of very simple and very basic because Adam Smith kind of developed that idea, 300 years ago, but it was not at all, it's somewhat counterintuitive and it was not known before him. And the pre-modern thinking was if I'm selling something to you, it's because I'm under duress and, like the one who dies with the most stuff wins, and selling is something you only do if you have to, and buying always makes you happy, you get more stuff, and there's a winner and a loser in every transaction. So there's a price of something that has a value, has a worth, it's known, there's the market price of this item, and if I'm selling it to you at a price that's higher, so I'm defrauding you. And if you're buying it from me at a price that's lower, you're defrauding me. And then that sale can be overturned, and we can do it the right way. Okay, so again, I don't know what that's it's hard to imagine a situation where that would. I don't know.
What if in like business,
Yeah.
you're going out and you start buying depressed assets?
Yeah. So depressed assets, you wouldn't say because it's like say real estate. The person in real estate,
Like
right?
a loan that would
Oh, a loan that's
has a
interesting.
value of X, but you're buying 10 cents on the dollar.
Yeah. So I think you would say there's a market for depressed assets, and the market price of loans of this kind is 10 cents on the dollar, and you're not defrauding the bank or whomever that you're buying it from. That's a fair price because they agree. Like it's profitable to them to get this loan off their books for 10 cents on the dollar because they can get some money right now and move on with their lives and invest that money. So they're winning. That's why they're doing it, and you're winning because you can get maybe 20 or 50 or 60 cents on the dollar for that with that depressed asset. You're gonna collect that money. So both of you win. I think that's why that's the capitalist free market understandings. Both of you are winning in that situation. A case where that might be as if something's isn't.
Foreclosure?
No, I would say if there's because in foreclosure also again there's a market for foreclosed homes that is. But what if somebody doesn't?
If they don't know the value.
If they don't know the value. Let's say I'm going to go to your house. I'm going to say, ooh, look, I'm going to buy a some antique some chair that I find in your house, and
You know it's by it.
I know this is this is a Chippendale, blah blah blah. That you're like, oh, this my grandmother used to found in her attic. It's like whatever, yeah, take it, $10, thanks, and it's worth $50,000. That would be a case where there is a market value for this item because but the seller, let's say, didn't know what it was.
So that show, Storage Wars, is
Yeah, the show.
It's horrible.
Yeah, maybe it's all about oppression. It's all about people defrauding one another, right? Maybe. I don't know. I haven't watched the show, but I think that could be a dynamic. Or it could be, or you go into you go into you get your car serviced, and the mechanic says, hey, you need to get a new blah 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 blah. And they go, yeah, sure, fine. $700. Okay, fine. It doesn't exist, or they made it up, or that's clearly fraud. That's clearly fraud. Maybe they sell you something for real. They actually change the air filter. They give you new brake pads, but you don't know how much brake pads cost. There's a rate. You go to you go to 100 auto shops in the city, and brake pads are $50, and they're selling you $200 for it because they figure
Then you would know that they were, so you're knowingly.
You would know. You would only know if you wouldn't know. You would know if you shop around. But if you if you look a little bit, you look young. It looks like it's your first car you ever owned. And they're like yeah, all right, $200, lady, for the brake pads. You're like, okay, and they'll say no, that's ridiculous, and then they'll say, oh, sorry, it was a mistake. I meant $20, or you'll just give them the credit card and they defraud you. But the Talmud also says that ona'ah, this crime of oppression of causing pain to one another, can also be violated through words. And the examples the Talmud gives what we may call today, we might make fun of today actually. I mean, there's a, but Talmud says to take it really seriously. Either like triggering speech or traumatic speech. If you find somebody who, for examples, the Talmud talks about, somebody converted to Judaism, you should not remind them of the fact that their grandparents were, worshipped Zeus or whatever, were Greco-Roman pagans. Like that's painful for them to recall the fact that, here they are trying to make it in a Jewish community and to, live a good Jewish life, and you're telling them, you're reminding them, your grandparents, were pagans. Like that's cruel speech, and that's another example. Even to use words that might be triggering. The example, if you had somebody whose parent was a pirate and was captured and hanged, don't use the word hanged in their presence. Don't say, oh, look at those fish hanging over there at the fish market. Say, oh, look at those fish. Don't use the word talui, right? The fish are hanging on a string, the fishmonger's, stall in the marketplace. That word for this person is really traumatic because that's how his grandfather, was killed by the by the Romans, because he was captured. But, like if the word itself is going to be painful and triggering, don't use it. Like, be very careful with your speech. Use sensitive speech. If the words that you use are going to evoke some traumatic memory or experience or be embarrassing in some way. So I think it's a very, very highly refined kind of demand for careful speech, ethical speech, and again, just avoiding, it's a responsibility on it, to not say things that are going to be painful to others. At some point, it's really hard because, anything you talk about is going to be somebody it's going to be traumatic to, right? Right, I just talked about fish. What if there's somebody here, there's somebody here who had, a trauma involving a fish when you were little, and, maybe this is a terrible, you're going to write me a letter, after class saying, I broke down when you talked about fish because, there was a giant fish, ate my sister, there's always something, if you speak to a large enough crowd, there's going to be somebody who's going to be really upset, but to the extent that it's possible, I think it's upon us, it's our responsibility to make sure that our words don't hurt other people's feelings, traumatize them, evoke traumatic memories or experiences, and just to be sensitive and say it and use a different word. Look at those fish for sale. Don't use the word hanged around this guy because you know this thing about him. Okay.
But if you don't know that about them, then
if you don't know. So you hurt his feelings accidentally. So you apologize and you move in and you try. Yeah. Right. I think it's possible to be educated about what is likely to be. If you're, for example, somebody who speaks in public every week in front of 150, 200 people, for example. So there's certain topics, it's going to be sensitive to somebody. There's, right? In a group of 200 people, it's going to be somebody who is, has struggling with infertility. There's going to be somebody who has mental illness. There's going to be somebody who is single and really wants to be partnered or married. It's going to be somebody who recently, lost a parent. Right? In any group of 200 people, that's going to happen. So it doesn't mean you don't mention any of those topics. Don't talk about children, but just be sensitive to the fact that if I'm going to give a sermon and talk about the value of education and children and Jewish family life, I have to realize that in my audience there are 20 people who are the greatest pain in their life right now is that they desperately want to be parents, and it's not working out for them medically or whatever, right? So that's right. So it doesn't mean I don't talk about it. It's like children and loving children, and right, this is an important Jewish value. It's my job to speak about it, but I just have to also bear in mind that those people are also my audience, and that has to be I don't need someone to tell me that, right? That maybe once upon a time I did, right? But now that I know, right, that you can be educated about things that are likely to be sensitive for any large group of people. Yeah, I think there's a lot of discourse, today about making fun of trigger warnings and these, snowflakes who you can't say anything that's landing to offensive because I don't know. I think human beings are actually really sensitive, and it's our responsibility. It's not, certain things, certain topics are important. They have to be talked about, and you have to, But I think it's if you open your mouth and you out, or you open the door, It's your house. You got into the world. It's your responsibility to not harm other people to the best that you can. And I don't, that doesn't, I think that's the ethical onus is on each one of us not to cause harm to others in any way. Okay. D, letter D. This is an interesting category of sin, which is defined as a person's complicity or involvement in somebody else's sin. The Torah literally says, "Lifnei iver lo titen mikshol." Literally, that means do not put a stumbling block before the blind. Right? You put a stumbling block before someone blind because he's going to trip and fall over it and hurt himself. So that's a pretty nasty thing to do because you're harming somebody in a way that he can't perceive. Right? You're taking advantage of his vulnerability. This is understood in a kind of metaphoric way with the Talmud. First of all, to refer to giving someone bad advice, and then also to enabling someone else to sin. So the classic example is you have somebody who, let's say, you have somebody on the other side of a river, and there's a little like bucket of a pulley, and you can pass things back and forth across the river. So he says, "Can you please pass me that non-kosher food?" So you say, "Okay," and you put it in the bucket, and you pass it over to him across the river, and he eats it. So that's lifnei iver. That is a violation of this prohibition of enabling somebody else to sin, because he couldn't get it. He had no access to the non-kosher food at his side of the river, and by putting it in the bucket and setting it across, you gave it to him, or you reached your hand out. That's lifnei iver. So you can't enable somebody else. What an example of that would be? It's not as common as it's not so common, but it can come up.
Another example?
Yeah, like contemporary life would be an example of enabling someone else to sin.
Jewish sin?
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Or like
Either one.
laws of like.
Serving non-kosher food at a wedding.
Serving non-kosher food at a wedding. Yeah, that's so interesting because of that, because they could sort of have access to non-kosher food without you. They don't need you to give them the food. On the other hand, you're sort of making it easy for them. You're encouraging them. So that's sort of like, are they on the other side of the river and you're putting it in the bucket and sending it to them, or are they on the same side of the river as you and you're just like, hand me that, like, you're sure, okay. They could have gotten them themselves. You're just making it easier for them. That's also bad, but not quite as bad. That's what Messiah is when you're involved, aiding sin, helping sin, as opposed to enabling sin, where they could not do it without you. Until you put it in the pulley and sent it through, they couldn't do it. So I was once in high school. I had a friend who smoked cigarettes. I knew a lot of people smoke cigarettes when I was in high school. It's not. But we were just walking and talking, and he wanted to buy a pack of cigarettes, and he had no money. So he asked me to borrow, $10 for me to buy a pack of cigarettes. So I didn't do it because I felt like I didn't want to enable his smoking. Could he have gotten smoking? Could he have gotten cigarettes without me? The answer at that point, no, he couldn't actually. He had no money. He was broke. He didn't have any money with him. He needed my money in order to do it. So by giving him that money, I was enabling him to do this harmful thing.
Or like buying alcohol for an underage person.
Buying alcohol for an underage person, they can't get it without you. You're enabling them to, let's say, use this product irresponsibly. Maybe, right? Exactly. Many cases, though, the person can do this thing without your help. Okay, so it's not as easy to violate as there's a lot of discussion in American literature. What if you invite someone for a Shabbat meal at your house? They're going to drive to get to you. They're going to drive to go home. This is a subject of a lot of halachic controversy. Some say you're inviting them, you're encouraging them, come to my house, and they're going to drive either to your house or going to drive home. You're encouraging them, enabling them to sin. The other response would be no, they could drive anyway. Like, they could drive to the mall, they could drive to the movies, they could drive to a nightclub. You could drive to the golf course. You are saying, please come to my house for Shabbat meal. The driving they could do anyway. The invitation is not enabling them to sin in a way they couldn't sin without you. But those who permit extending invitations to those who you think will drive to or from that, you have to give them the option of not driving. So, I'd love for you to come for Shabbat. I have friends you can stay with. Spend all the Shabbat with us. I really would love that. If you're not gonna do it, all right, come for lunch, come for dinner, whatever, fine. But like, I just want you should know the invitation's there. So if the invitation has to be a sincere invitation, a sincere offering that they don't have to leave Friday night and go back home, or when you're making plans, you could say if you want that invitation is freely offered and it's real and sincere. They said yes, you'd find a place for them somehow. Then the lenient scholars say it's permissible to extend invitation. Well, giving water to somebody or food to somebody who's not going to say a blessing before they eat. Right? Forbidden to eat in Jewish law forbids eating without saying a blessing first. So somebody's not going to say a blessing. It's like, give me an apple. Can I have a cup of water? I'm thirsty. Can you give them water? So some say you can't give them water because they're going to drink the water without saying a blessing. You're giving them the water. They don't have the water. They're asking you for water because they don't have it. And so you give them the water, they're going to drink with that. The lenient position, which I think is much, 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 much more compelling, is to say that if you don't give them water, they're going to hate Judaism and hate God and hate the Torah, which is much, much worse for them than just giving them the water which they drink without a blessing.
Well, there could even be pikuach nefesh, you don't know.
Fine, if their life is in danger, of course you give them the water. But this is the case at hand was not someone's life was in danger. It was a wealthy donor who was visiting a yeshiva that he was donating money to, and he was not going to say a bracha if he asked for one. If he gave him water, but he wanted some water. So Rosh Hashanah Arba says you give him water because this crime of enabling somebody to sin, we look at it holistically. And holistically, the fact that this donor is connected to the yeshiva, connected to your synagogue, involved, the fact that these people you're inviting to your house are friends with you and come to your home and experience Shabbat and holidays in your home, that's holistically in their advantage. That makes it more likely they're going to do more mitzvah rather than less, and so it's permissible. But it's, these are weighty issues, and each case has to be thought through carefully. Lifnei iver, again, that's when you're enabling it. Misayea is when you are complicit, involved, helping them, but you didn't actually cause it. And mesit is when you actually seduce or encourage somebody to do something wrong. That's really, really bad, right? That's like the worst of all, when you, again, like you're not just enabling, not just participating, but you're actually encouraging, and they wouldn't have done it without you, and you're like, coaxing them, etc. Okay, that's the worst. I think.
So what is the difference between enabling and aiding?
Enabling that's when they're on two sides of the river, right? He can't do the sin without you. And aiding is he could do it without you, but he's asking your help. So that would be right. That's give me that. Buy me a non-kosher food, right? He could do it without you. He doesn't need you, but you're doing it with him, and you're enabling him, making it easy, right? Okay. It's also okay. I think we're going to. I don't know. I think 10 minutes is not a great time to do. Well, maybe we'll just start for like 4 or 5 minutes. Maybe 4 minutes. We'll start Roman numeral 6, but we're not going to get very far. Okay. I made allusion before to blessings. In Judaism, we say blessings. We acknowledge God before and after we eat. Okay. Really, before and after any physical benefit from the world, we say blessing, thanking God. The Talmud speaks of. What's it called? What's the word? In English, it's called misappropriation, right? To take advantage of something that some benefit of the world without saying a blessing. First, it's described as misappropriation, like you're stealing from God, stealing from the universe. Like the universe is here for our benefit, the world is here for our benefit. We have to acknowledge God's role in creating the world and giving us the strength and the prosperity to enjoy it, the health to enjoy it, and by saying a blessing, we acknowledge that, and then we are entitled to eat or drink or whatever the thing might be. Next time we'll go through, we'll look at all the blessings, we'll review them and take a look at what they are and what they are said, what foods or drinks or whatever they are said for. After eating and before eating. After eating is described, as the Talmud says, the Torah says explicitly, you shall eat and be satisfied, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land that He gave you. It says it in Deuteronomy, so it's a way to overcome this feeling of I'm wealthy, I have lots of food. my own strength, is what, conquered the world. That's how I did it myself. That's the attitude the Torah warns against. And to warn against the attitude of I built it myself, I did it myself, we thank God afterwards. And say, no, actually God gave this to us, and we acknowledge God through saying grace after meals, but we also say blessings before meals, again, as a way to get the right to enjoy the world in some way, right? Our right to the world is because we've acknowledged God's will and to us. And so next time we'll look at all the blessings, more concrete when we actually go through them and see them all, read them, and we can talk about them in great detail next time we meet. I just saw Ogden Nash, the sort of poet, he said, there are many things that money can't buy, but there are many things that money can't buy. The things that money can't buy, you also can't buy without money. That's very clever. Nothing to do with what they're saying, I thought it was a very clever comment. You can contemplate that. Okay, next class we're going to meet is going to be next Monday is Hanukkah. We're not going to be next Monday. Monday the 25th, I imagine people are traveling and maybe out of town, or? You mean Monday the 25th at 7? Are people here? People out of town? No, people are. Yeah, that makes sense. My kids are after school and Monday, January 1st, people are also out of town, traveling. Okay. Monday, January 8th, there's a meeting, and Monday, January 15th, we can meet the 22nd of January, so that's a long time from now. No?
So December 25th would be
Is anybody available December 25th?
Yeah.
Or you guys are away?
Yeah, but you guys can.
Three of you are away.
Watch on
My mother's visiting that week, so I'd rather just soon be home with her also that week. So, what about Tuesday the 9th? Tuesday, January 9th, can we do that? At 7? Okay, let's meet at 7, okay? Great. We're going to have a Marv minion right now, the evening prayer service. There's a member of the congregation who is observing Yard, so it's the anniversary of the death of a relative, so if you're able to stick around and join us, we're going to get started, I think, at 8 o'clock, so in 5 minutes, so please stick around, and as soon as the minion gets here, we'll get to daven, and if you haven't done that before, that's also okay, we'll teach you how, we have prayer books, and you can join us, please, okay? Thank you. All right.